In the history of God's dealings with humanity, few groups illustrate the interplay of divine justice, mercy, and the consequences of sin as clearly as the Amorites. Their story is intricately woven with that of the Israelites, particularly during the Exodus, and reveals the depth of God's patience and inevitable judgment that comes from persistent rebellion. The Amorites, often referred to as Amorites in older interpretations, were one of the prominent Canaanite tribes inhabiting the land of Canaan before and during the time of the Israelite conquest under Joshua. According to Genesis 10 verses 15 to 16, the Amorites were descendants of Canaan, the son of Ham and grandson of Noah, placing them among the Canaanite tribes listed in the Table of Nations. To understand the Amorites' fate, we must first look at the story of their ancestor, Canaan, and the generational shadow cast by his forefather, Ham. The story of Ham and Canaan. After the flood, Noah, a man declared righteous by God and chosen to preserve humanity, planted a vineyard. One day, after drinking wine from his vineyard, Noah became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. His son Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and dishonored him by speaking about it to his brothers instead of covering him. In contrast, Shem and Japheth, Ham's brothers, showed respect by taking a cloak, walking backward into the tent, and covering their father without looking at him. When Noah awoke and learned of Ham's actions, he pronounced a curse, not directly on Ham, but on Ham's son Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. Genesis 9 verse 25 ESV. This curse marked Canaan's descendants with a prophecy of subjugation and disgrace, which echoed through the generations. Canaan's lineage would eventually include the Amorites, a people known for their idolatry, immorality, and rebellion against God. The rise and fall of the Amorites. The descendants of Canaan settled in a fertile region that came to bear his name, Canaan. Among these descendants were the Amorites, who established thriving cities and became known as powerful and influential people. They lived in hill country, built strongholds, and ruled over vast territories. However, the Amorites inherited more than land and power. They also perpetuated the dishonorable ways of their forefather, Canaan. Their culture became synonymous with idolatry, corruption, and defiance of God's commandments. God, in his long-suffering patience, allowed the Amorites time to repent. As he told Abraham centuries earlier, "In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." Genesis 15 verse 16 NIV. When the Israelites finally entered the Promised Land, the Amorites' sins had reached their zenith. Their defiance culminated in their refusal to allow the Israelites safe passage during the Exodus. Kings Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan, Amorite rulers, mobilized their armies against Israel, but both were utterly defeated under divine guidance. Numbers 21:21-35. This conquest fulfilled Noah's ancient curse and God's promise to Abraham, as the Israelites displaced the Amorites and inherited their lands. The Amorites' downfall prompts an intriguing question. Was it the curse on Canaan that made his descendants rebellious and led to their displacement by Israel? Or was it the lifestyle of dishonor, idolatry, and defiance they chose to live? The answer is both. The curse set a spiritual precedent, but their chosen lifestyle reinforced and fulfilled the judgment against them. Their story is a sobering reminder of how generational curses and personal choices can intertwine to shape destinies. A legacy of dishonor and displacement. The Amorites' name is thought to derive from the Akkadian word Amuru, meaning Westerners. In ancient texts outside the Bible, they are described as a nomadic or semi-nomadic people, yet their history in the Bible is one of entrenched rebellion and eventual judgment. Ultimately, the Amorites' legacy is a testament to the consequences of dishonor, defiance, and persistent sin. Their displacement by Israel reflects the fulfillment of God's justice and the reality of His promises, stretching from Noah's time to the Israelite conquest of the Promised Land. Their fate echoes a timeless truth. While God is patient, His justice cannot be ignored. The Amorites and the judgment of God. In Mesopotamian records, the Amorites first appear around the 3rd millennium BCE as a significant group in the Near East. They eventually migrated and settled in areas of modern-day Syria and Mesopotamia, where they established influential kingdoms, including Babylon under the famous king Hammurabi. In biblical history, the Amorites are described as inhabitants of the hill country of Canaan, Numbers 13:29, east of the Jordan River, and regions such as Gilead and Bashan, Deuteronomy 4 verse 47. They controlled notable cities like Heshbon, ruled by King Sihon, and Bashan, ruled by King Og. The Amorites were renowned for their stature and strength, often being associated with giants. Deuteronomy 2 verses 10 to 11, Amos 2 verse 9. However, their culture mirrored that of other Canaanite groups, with practices steeped in idolatry and child sacrifice, actions that God unequivocally condemned. Of dishonor. The Amorites trace their ancestry back to Canaan, the grandson of Noah. Ham, Canaan's father, dishonored Noah by failing to show the respect due to him, leading to Noah's curse upon Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. Genesis 9 verse 25. This curse shaped the destiny of Canaan's descendants, including the Amorites. While Noah was declared righteous by God, his descendants through him veered into lifestyles of dishonor, rebellion, and idolatry. This moral corruption became a defining characteristic of the Amorites and other Canaanite tribes. Encounters with Israel. During Israel's exodus from Egypt, the Amorites opposed God's chosen people, most notably under the leadership of Kings Sihon and Og. In Numbers 21:21-22, Moses sent a diplomatic request to King Sihon, seeking permission to pass peacefully through Amorite territory along the king's highway. Let us pass through your land. We will not turn aside into any field or vineyard, nor drink water from any well. We will go along the king's highway until we have passed through your territory. However, Sihon refused and assembled his army to confront the Israelites. This act of defiance was more than a political decision. It reflected the Amorites' deep-seated rebellion against God. The result was a swift and decisive victory for Israel, with God delivering the Amorites into their hands. Numbers 21:24. The Israelites conquer Heshbon and its surrounding cities, taking possession of the Amorite lands from the Arnon to the Jabbok. King Og of Bashan met a similar fate. Despite his reputation as a mighty ruler and a remnant of the Rephaim, a race of giants, his forces were utterly defeated. Deuteronomy 3 verses 3 to 11. These victories signaled a fulfillment of God's judgment on the Amorites, as foretold to Abraham centuries earlier. God's warning to Abraham. Long before the Exodus, God revealed to Abraham his plan for the Amorites. In Genesis 15 verse 16, God said, "In the 4th generation, your descendants will return here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." This statement showed God's patience and mercy. Although the Amorites were entrenched in sin, God delayed their judgment, giving them time to repent. Unfortunately, they continued in their wickedness, defiling the land through their practices. By the time of Israel's arrival, their iniquity had reached its full measure, necessitating divine judgment. The Amorites' legacy of sin. The Amorites became a symbol of human pride, rebellion, and moral corruption. Their idolatry and detestable practices defiled the land, prompting God's command for their complete removal. Leviticus 18 verses 24 to 25 highlights this. Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I am going to drive out before you became defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. Despite their destruction, the Amorites' influence lingered. The remnants of their idolatry tempted Israel repeatedly, leading them into sin. Judges 10 verse 6 describes how the Israelites worshipped the gods of the Amorites, forsaking Yahweh and provoking his anger. The Amorite story is a testament to the interplay of divine patience, justice, and the consequences of sin. Their defiance against God, exemplified by their opposition to Israel and their idolatrous practices, led to their downfall. The judgment upon them fulfilled God's promises and demonstrated his sovereignty over nations. Their legacy serves as a warning about the dangers of pride, rebellion, and compromise with sin, a timeless reminder of the need for faithfulness to God.